Well, do you want to be competent and dangerous, or do you want to be vague and useless? It is definitely the case that there is no the capacity to be dangerous than to be articulate. And one of the things that really shocks me.
You once said the most dangerous person is one who is articulate. What would you recommend to a one who wants to learn to speak in a more articulate manner?
Well, articulate is an interesting word, because if your joints are articulated, and that means you can do things with them because they're articulated, right? They're not one solid, vague mass. They're differentiated. And someone who's graceful is articulated and compelling because they're articulated. And speech is a form of articulation in that manner because the act of speech itself is extremely complicated. It's a very complicated motor activity, right? It's a very complicated action to dance with your tongue, let's say. And it is definitely the case that there is no more exceptional form of the capacity to be dangerous than to be articulate. Well, do you want to be competent and dangerous, or do you want to be vague and useless? Because those are your options, and I don't care what your job is. It doesn't matter what you end up doing. You know, if you're a plumber, with great respect for plumbers, by the way, and you're articulate, you can negotiate with your clients, you can introduce your coworkers, you can make a case for your employees, you can advertise your services, you can think through your problems. You're firing on all cylinders.
No importa qué carrera o actividad requieras hacer. No importa qué hagas. Todo es mejorable si tienes una excelente habilidad de articular tus palabras para atrapar a los demás en tus ideas y en lo que necesitas hacer. Quien articule bien lo que dice, tendrá más éxito con sus relaciones.
So, it's a great thing to be articulate. And it would be so lovely if our educators were wise enough to communicate this appropriately to young men who are striving forward, and to let them know in no uncertain terms that if they want to make themselves into forces to be contended with, that there's no surer route to that than an exceptional poetic literacy. Now, it's not like young people don't have an intuition of this. There are reasons they admire rap musicians, for example, who are often extraordinarily articulate in their performance and their capacity for spontaneous poetic utterance.
También es importante resaltar lo esencial de enseñar una buena comunicación en los jóvenes. Y como dice Peterson, no es que los jóvenes no sepan sobre esto, porque lo ven y sienten con la música que escuchan. Pero aplicarlo y usarlo es lo que necesitan aprender.
Okay, so that's the case for being articulate. And what's the alternative? You want to be inarticulate? You want to say and like and and pause and stumble and be unable to formulate a strategy, be unable to elucidate a vision, be unable to compel and convince other people, to entice them with your articulated vision of what might be? You want the opposite of that? Why would you want that? You would choose awkwardness over grace? It's preposterous. It's beyond foolish. And I cannot understand for the life of me why this case isn't made in a compelling manner.
Nunca, pero nunca prefieras elegir hablar torpemente sobre hablar con elegancia y a un nivel conciso que atrapen a los demás en cada palabra que digas. En resumen, no seas mediocre. Ahora veamos cómo ser elegante con nuestra manera de hablar.
So, how do you become articulate? Well, by paying attention to what you say. That's a good start. And what do I mean by that? I mean pay attention to what you say. So you can think of this as an analogy. So imagine that you're trying to walk across a swamp, and the swamp is murky, but you know there's a path. You know there's a path of stone under the water, but it twists and moves. And if you stay on the path, you won't drown. The crocodiles in the swamp won't devour you. And as you walk forward, you can feel with your next step where the stone might be. And then you feel it's solid, then you take that step, and then you do the same thing with your foot again. You search and you find out what's solid, and you step on it, and you move forward in that manner. That's what you do with your words. It's the same thing. You feel, and you feel, is this the right word? Is the fact that I'm uttering it putting me together and making me intact and stronger, or is it tearing me apart and making me dissolute and weak? And you can learn to do that, feeling my way along to see what word was appropriate for what moment. But you can learn to do that. And you can listen to yourself, and you can stop humming and hawing and using like and you know and fillers. And you can take the time necessary to craft your words carefully. And you can practice merely saying what you believe to be true. And you can read. And you can read great writers, and you can write. And you can write about what you think about the problems that obsess you. And you can become articulate as a consequence. And there'll be nothing about that that isn't the adventure of your life.
Para empezar a ser más articulado, toma tu tiempo para pensar claramente qué palabras vas a decir y la que le sigue, de tal manera que entre todas se apoyen y aumenten o disminuyan el tono de tu habla. Y así articular lo que dices. Intenta hacer lo que dice Peterson. Imagina que cruzas un río, que es la conversación o la atención de tu público. Si pisas las rocas correctas para cruzar, que vendrían siendo las palabras, y tanteas antes de dar un paso firme, podrás llegar al otro lado sin caerte al río y destruir lo que quieres decir o expresar.
I'll give you one more small example. Tammy touched on this in the introduction too. She said she'd learned to pause. You can pause. It's a prayerful pause in some sense. When you're in a discussion with someone, you can ask yourself, they might present you with a question or a conundrum or a proposition, and instead of responding with what you know to be right, so to speak, you could just ask yourself, what do I actually think about that? But it has to be a real question. It has to be the kind of question that you pose to someone you didn't know. It has to be a question predicated on the idea that you might not know who you are and that you could ask. And so someone will present you with a question, you think, okay, what do I think about that? But you have to want to know the answer, and then the answer will make itself known, because that's how thought works, and then you can just communicate that answer. And if you do that, you'll be interesting right away. You'll be interesting to the person that you're talking to. And if they do that to you, they'll be interesting too. And then if you both do that, you'll have an interesting conversation. And if you have an interesting conversation, you'll both grow as a consequence. And that's actually the pathway to growth. And you just wait. You can wait. You can open yourself up to the possibility that what needs to be said will make itself manifest, if that's what you are striving for, if that's what you're asking for. And then you can merely communicate that. You have to abandon instrumentality to do that.
Otra recomendación es pausar mientras hablas. Trata de tener conciencia en lo que dices. A veces nos vamos de automático cuando sabemos una respuesta o somos expertos en el tema. Pero si te detienes un momento a verdaderamente en pensar, ¿qué opino sobre esto?, notarás que tendrás varias ideas que comunicar y que harán la conversación mucho más interesante, y asimismo para la otra persona. Recuerda, yo solo sé que no sé nada. Ten en cuenta esta cita de Sócrates antes de dar una respuesta u opinión que de verdad quieras inyectar con grandes cantidades de curiosidad, ideas y puntos de reflexión en los temas de tus conversaciones o discursos. Además, esta capacidad de hablar articuladamente te hace ver como una persona con confianza y conocimiento, que hace atraer a otras personas.
Align what you said with who you were, and that one of the things that your clients would be evaluating you for was that capability. And you might say that someone with that capability manifests themselves as genuine and trustworthy. And more than that, I would say also as compelling and interesting.
Ahora, quiero que te enfoques en el siguiente mensaje de Peterson, en el que habla sobre un último consejo, de hablar con total honestidad. Es decir, si hablas con verdadero interés o conciencia, y esto lo reflejas en tus palabras, estarás caminando el sendero del éxito.
The pathway to success is much, if you're guided by the spirit of honest inquiry and every word you say is reflective of what you believe to be the truth, then the pathway that you walk on is a golden pathway to success. And I know that. I know that to be true.